Okay, I think we're ready to make a start. I just sort of mentioned at the very start on rules on council procedure on recording the meeting. If any members of the public here do not wish to record it, then please indicate, and we will ensure that Mr. Taylor is recording. If you can make sure you keep your camera on the committee members and not swing it around to the members of the public. Is that okay? Right, fine. Okay. Yeah. Well, no one's actually put their hand up to object, so we have an objection. Okay. Can I welcome you to the North Area Committee? I'm Mike Todd-Jones, new chair. Well, sort of returned chair. And Councillor Kevin Price is our vice chair. Glenn Burgess is our committee manager. Hopefully we'll although we haven't got that long an agenda on the outset, actually item 7, which is about environment improvement programme, could be quite lengthy and complicated. I know a number of questions relating to the open forum relate to that, so I'll refer to that and we'll take the questions that aren't specific about environment improvement programme. So first of all, can I ask for any apologies for absence? I have to repeat the old joke of apart from Roy Hodgson in the England team, but any other apologies for absence? Peter Saris. Any others?
And Mike James.
Yeah, and I think Paul Sales is coming, but he'll be coming later. And Zan Austin is had to go to a memorial service, I believe, and will be returning as soon as that's over, which we hope will be fairly soon. Yes, and also Kevin and I, of course, perhaps known as a great double act here. Well, I hope it's a great double act, but we hope to continue in that vein. At the Housing Security Committee, I think Little and Large seem to go down festival, although we'll carry on the two Ronnies theme, I think.
I'm clearly different.
I also want to thank Councillor Pitt, for our previous North Area Chair, for chairing the meeting over the past year. And a particular welcome to new councillors. So we have from Arbury, I think we've got no bell, no drum roll, but we have Councillor Perry representing Arbury. From King's Edges we have Councillor Smart. And as I mentioned, we have from West Chesterton, Zan Austin, Peter Saris from East Chesterton. And so welcome to all those. On to any declarations of interest. So mention them now on the items of the agenda that you have want to declare a declaration of interest. You can, of course, bring up any declaration of interest when we get to the item itself. So any declarations of interest? No? Okay.
I suppose I've got one.
Yes, okay, Councillor.
So I'm a member of the Friends of Mitcham's Corner, so that's an interest.
Yeah, thank you for that. Right, okay, on to the, you said we did, you want to know, this is the minutes and the action list, so that's pages 5 to 20 of your agenda. I think I've got a note that Mike Pitt wanted to mention in particular Milton Road trees. We added reference to the action list, is that correct? Yep, I've got a note here somewhere. I assume one of his colleagues might know what he was talking about. Right.
Chair, I think I might know what that's related to, which is the fact that there's a suggestion in the transport delivery plan that a bus be put down Milton Road, and I think that's probably what it's a reference to, and thus risk to the trees, which I believe Mike is taking up. So.
Okay, and no doubt he can follow up on that when he's next at the North Area. Okay, thanks for that. So we go on to the minutes and the action list, page 5 to 20. Anything else to add? Any corrections? Do you report back on the action list? No?
Just on the minutes, I've sent some corrections into the committee manager. Do I need to repeat them now?
It probably would be good to
repeat it. Now I'm trying to remember what they are. Page 15, my comment was actually just to say that it was not about protecting Stagecoach's profits, which was like clarification rather than protecting Stagecoach itself. I'm now desperately trying to remember what the other correction I sent in was.
I believe it was on page 9, Councillor Manning, referring to the Declaration of Steering Group.
Yes, just the point I made the point that the steering group itself was public, and Mr. Taylor has been invited on multiple occasions if he wishes to attend. And that's before what I then say about formal consultation in the minutes.
Councillor Price?
Well, I think I've just spotted one, Chair. On page 11, Timothy Bond, I believe that's Timothy Sykes as opposed to Mr. Bond, but I wouldn't stand me for it.
I think it was, yes. I think was it you, Mr. Bond, who asked that question? No. Mr. Sykes, there we go. Timothy Sykes. Do you have a question, Mr. Bond?
Page 10, it says, Michael Bond has would like to see the team after your reporting 20 mile/hour speed limit. I acknowledge that it is difficult to keep, it wasn't up to hard work, it was down to 20 miles an hour.
Thank you for that. Any other corrections or comments? And the action list. Will you run through the action list? Yeah. So, page 17. Do we have any follow-up or comments on the action list? Well, anything on page 17? Yep, Councillor Onasanya.
Thank you, Chair. In respect of the cycle signage, I received an email with a plan attached to it, and I forwarded the same to Mr. Taylor, and I believe that it's on his blog. But a further update on that, with regards to the plan, I had further feedback, which basically they've said that they advised me that the relevant people that are now looking at traffic regulations, bear with me. Basically, in respect of the plan, they've said to me that the plan was just by way of update, and it's just a summary of the initial survey and recommendations. They've been advised that relevant people will liaise with the traffic regulation people as well, because I think I also used to look into the regulations as well. And they'll develop things further. The plan as it is not a proposal, it's just evidence of work in progress. Because the first update that I gave at the beginning of the year, they had mentioned to me that they would come back to me in July. So the feedback that they've now given me is that they just wanted to show me that things are underway. However, they haven't got a final plan in place, because I've asked what signs will be being replaced, where they'll be being replaced, which areas they agree with me are in the most needed work. But they said they haven't concluded that body of work as yet, and will keep me updated with the progress.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ansania. And over the page, page 18, there's any add there, Councillor Ansania, and are there any colleagues of Councillor Ward? Councillor Manning.
I wonder, Chair, on that point, could we write via you to the, I can't remember the name of the body now, who came to North Area Committee of the Joint Working Partnership, where we brought up repeatedly this issue, and they were supposed to be taking it away as a priority. Could we write to them and get an update on what they've actually done? So it's just the police, it's community safety partnership, isn't it? That's what I'm thinking of. So could we write to them via you just to say what's the action you've taken from that?
Yep, we'll do that. We can get some feedback from the community safety partnership. Okay, over the page 19, page 19. Report back there at all from Councillor Manning, Onasanya, Councillor Pitt, Councillor Manning.
So the tree roots thing is still ongoing. The cost of the bridge bridge and the foundation work was 330,000. And then I was just going to add, I don't know if Councillor Onasanya has got anything to add to our joint action, but that in respect of the closure of the underpass on Milton Road, which is taking part as part of the rail station project. So for anyone who's interested, the first visible side of the new rail station is actually happening now. That underpass will be closed, and I'm currently working with the officers to make sure we do actually get some proper signage, and also the actual nature of the closure that relates to that point.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I think that's... Councillor Onasanya.
Thank you, Chair. Just by way of communication, when I spoke to the officers, They have said to me that they do try to communicate as widely as possible. However, they do need to have feedback when we feel that it hasn't been communicated appropriately. So one of the consultations that they did one on Woodhead Drive, and I went back because it was the same response saying that enough people didn't feel that they'd been told. So they were actually revisiting that consultation and doing that again. So they have asked that we feed back to them to let them know, because otherwise they don't know that people don't feel they've been consulted. So that's feedback on that point.
Okay, thanks for that. I think that concludes that section. Do you want to sign off for a minute?
No, well, what I will do, Chair, is make those minor amendments and we'll sign those outside of the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we move on to item 4, which is the open forum. And as I said earlier, we've got a couple of questions which relate to the environment improvement programme. So we'll take those when we get to that agenda item 7. Questions from Kimon Rusopoulos and Francis Skeffington. So we'll take those later, that's okay. We can answer those questions when we get to item 7 on environment improvement programme. Yes, Councillor Manning.
Sorry, is it okay if we could just check whether those people are actually able to stay that late?
Yeah, that's a fair point, yes.
How late do you expect that to be?
Well, good question. In fact, it's rather open-ended. Depends on whether the Iron Fist chair can crack on with the agenda or not. But, I mean, we could, if we wished, move item 7 up the agenda. We could do that and take item 7 first. Yep. Is everyone happy with that? We don't need to vote on that. Okay, we'll do that then. So before we get to item 7, though, we have the rest of the open forum, and we have questions. I've got three people who have tabled questions. From Mr. Bond. It's a pleasure to meet again, Mr. Bond. From Mr. Taylor and from Lil Speed. So, Mr. Bond, your questions first. The microphone is on its way.
Well, not really a question. A couple of reports. Last weekend before last, actually now, Chesterton Festival took place, and great fun was had by all. I have actually taken up as a side issue with Alistair. Last year we had problems getting a truck off the recreation ground. This year we had the reverse problem, getting one onto the recreation ground. That's something which I have spoken to Alistair about, and we'll be having a look at that. But otherwise, the day went very well, the weather was very kind to us. So thank you to the North Area Committee for the funding which actually made it possible. We've more or less broken even, but in fact, I haven't finished doing the arithmetic, but quite a lot of money was raised for some local charities and by stall holders who came onto the wreck. We had nearly 50 stalls booked. Strangely enough, some of them didn't actually turn up on the day, but I think that's because there were a lot of other things going on. They probably had double booked themselves. So that was a good event. On the last weekend, St Andrew's Hall ended the first stage of its existence, in that its first manager, Eleanor Wally, resigned and has actually moved to St Neots to take up a curacy, having been ordained as a deacon at Ely Cathedral on Sunday. I was there, it was a smashing place, very interesting service as well, for those who are interested in those sort of things, which I confess I am. But I just want to say that we got the place built with support from the City Council, got it open, but Eleanor actually made it work. And we said goodbye to her on Sunday afternoon at a party in the hall, and that was a very enjoyable occasion with, well, I didn't do a count, it was just as well, because we probably exceeded the capacity with a number of people in there. So that's that one. In terms of St Andrew's Hall, as you know, we've got a development programme, which the builders actually moved in yesterday, and unfortunately had to go off-site today. Because the trouble is, when you start digging, you sometimes find things you didn't know were there, or you didn't know quite where they were. And we've discovered that we have a gas pipe in not quite the right place. And Transco tell us they can deal with it in 2 months' time. We are actually going to look at a different way of dealing with it rather than wait 2 months before we can continue building. But that, I hope, is going to be the worst of the hiccups. But there will be a closure in August for 2 weeks of the whole hall, but otherwise most of it will be operational throughout the building period. So again, thanks to the North Area Committee and the support for that particular programme. That's what I wanted to say.
Well, thank you, Mr. Bond. Thanks for the report. And yes, I was at the Cheston Festival. I didn't intend to stay the whole day, but I did, and it was a very enjoyable event, I must say. Okay, so next question. So we also have a question from Lil Speed.
My questions are for Ian. Now, I don't know if he's going to be polite and answer them, but I want to know from him how long he has been a county councillor for Chesterton, what does he get paid for, and what has he done in Chesterton, which is a good thing, and not, I know he's done some bad things. So, can he answer that question, or is he going to keep quiet?
Thank you. We'll let Councillor Manning respond, but I'm sure Councillor Manning, like all of us, does his best and hopefully gets rewarded appropriately. But I'll let Councillor Manning respond himself.
I'm only too happy to respond, Chair. How long? I was elected in 2010. September, I believe, off the top of my head. County councillors get a basic allowance of 7,400 and something a year, which is probably a princely sum to city councillors, I believe. And sorry, what was the third question? I mean, do you want a list, or do you?
Yes, I would love a list.
I can give you a list.
So we haven't got all night. Just pick out your highlights, Councillor.
Numerous EIP bids that I've put in, planning applications that I've helped with. Penny Ferry, raising the 100,000 for Fen Road, all the work I'm doing around the new railway station. Do you want more? Or?
No, you send me a list and then I'll go through. But one question I want to ask you. You are a county councillor. You were selected by the people in East Chesterton. But one job you haven't done, which is important, and that is the pathway. I don't think you ever look at the pathways in Chesterton. You don't look at the poles. And when we mentioned anything, you don't get them done. So who is your boss? And I will talk to him.
I don't believe I can.
Councillor Manning, yes, well, we the people.
Yes,
you the people. You are the boss.
I technically have a boss in terms of a line manager.
Oh, that's a pity. Because
it is a shame, actually, sometimes. I want to talk to someone.
No, you listen, this is a public
Alright, well,
meeting.
can you quickly wrap up, Bill?
Right, another thing is, the shop in Green Inn Road, which you've done a stupid thing on Polling Day. Was it because he put Labour up, not Conservative, or Liberals? The Glass World shop? Yet, have you bothered to look at the one in Green Inn Road?
It's worth just saying that I've worked quite a lot with Jay to help him with his transport assessment.
No, you haven't.
Well, I've got text messages from my phone to say differently, so
he's
very, very grateful to me. So.
Yeah, Lou, I don't think we can have an argument across the floor in this meeting.
Not an argument.
Well, it sounded like it was becoming an argument.
No, it was a question.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, and we have a question from Mr. Taylor. In fact, usually submits a number of questions, but have they been addressed, any of them yet, or do you want to mention?
I think I can be helpful, Chairman, because Councillor Pitt told me what he'd be raising on the Milton Road trees, and that's the issue that some of the newly planted trees have failed and haven't been replaced. Now, some of them have, and some of them haven't. It's just that it's fallen off your to-do list that you keep bringing back. So it's just to keep it on the to-do list so that when we get to winter, when they can actually be planted, that we think about which ones get replaced. I I submitted something on the cycle pass, and I think from the update we've received, essentially we can ignore the plan and the update that's come from the County Council because it's just done by a junior officer who's now left. And it's a very worrying update and plan because it involves removing some of the existing cycleways. It's a lot more involved than just doing some maintenance and repairing the signage and repairing the lines. But I think we can ignore it until we actually get a serious plan. I think that's the best way to go, rather than trying to comment on all the elements of the plan, which isn't a proposal, is what we were just told. I'd like to ask the committee if you can do something about the junction between Milton Road and the new development between Milton Road and Woodhead Drive. And this is a junction which I live relatively close to. Now, the planning permission for that development was conditional on, essentially, on work being done on the junction. It's described in various ways as either a safety assessment. The actual condition refers to approving the white lines on the at the junction, and one of the committee members has described it as a sort of a condition related to the visibility of the junction. Now, I can't see anything on the Planning Public Access website to say that that's actually been dealt with, so I'd like to ask if the committee could chase that up so that we can just find out, has some kind of safety assessment for that junction been done. I think it's timely because it seems like that development's getting complete now, so presumably they're going to want to sort the junction out before people can live there.
Oh, thanks so much. Well, yeah, certainly look into the planning condition about the junction. The other matters, highways, really issues more, I think, perhaps by County Council. Councillor Price.
Just so I'm clear, Chair, we're talking about the latest development where the house was demolished on Milton Road, yeah, and the house is behind it. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Councillor Riley.
Just to respond on the broken trees, which I know you've raised before, and if that wasn't what Councillor Pitt was going to bring up, I'm very happy to bring back an update to the next North Area Committee on those, okay?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Onasanya.
Thank you, Chair. In respect of the junction between Milton Road and Woodhead Drive, I'm happy to liaise with Highways to see whether the safety assessment's been done.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Any other points? Other questions from the floor or anything in the open forum? Okay, thank you. That concludes that. So, as we... okay, we have some technical stuff here, or formal stuff. So we got under paragraph 100B of the council rules. I propose to alter the order of the agenda. So you're going to bring up item 7, environment improvement programme, to the next item. So we'll move on to that item straight away, and we have Andy Preston, environment improvement project team, to give us an introduction.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. My name is Andy Preston, Project Delivery and Environment Manager for the City Council. The report that you have this evening is the annual report that requests that the committee allocate the Environment Improvement Programme's annual funding to the list of new suggestions. Firstly, just to start with a small apology in the complexity of the report and the last-minute changes that have had to take place to it, which is a result of the County Council's Local Highways Improvement Programme and the way that that programme operates in terms of the match funding contributions that it requires. Basically, West Central Area Committee last Tuesday didn't allocate funding to certain schemes, and therefore that brought new schemes up from further down the prioritised list, and therefore affected this report. So we've had to change some of the recommendations and the numbers in those recommendations. I will obviously run through in a fair bit of detail just to make sure that it's as clear as possible. So in terms of the report itself, starting with Appendix E, the list of minor traffic orders, that is a budget that was provided by the County Council and the Environment Improvement Programme back in 2011-12, which was specifically for minor traffic orders. You will see in Appendix E that there are schemes that have been completed, schemes that are still in progress, as the traffic order process is quite a lengthy process. And also there are a couple of new schemes that are proposed to be funded. One thing that has been unfortunately missed from that list is the Brunley Road School warning signs that this committee allocated to this budget. back in August of last year. So the true budget remaining figure is actually £965.88. So the Brimley Road scheme requires £2,000 for the school warning signs, so that it is £965 remaining. But the decision this evening for this committee is to allocate £3,350 to the two schemes that are identified in the proposed list towards the bottom of that spreadsheet. So that is the recommendation. Moving on to 2 point. Right, so some of you may have the old papers.
Yes, there should be a copy on everybody's processing of the new one that was circulated via email, and there are spare copies on the table. So
Basically, there was a county-funded scheme in that list that is now funded by EIP. So with the risk of making it more and more complicated, I will move on. But there is now only two new schemes for that budget to fund. The third scheme now has secured County Council LHI funding. So moving back to 2.1, recommendation 2.1, this committee has traditionally funded through this the EIP programme the hanging baskets along Chesterton High Street, of which there are 36. And the cost of both providing and maintaining those baskets throughout the summer is £5,954. So that's a recommendation to come from the annual budget this year, which is £82,231 in total, which does include some rephasing from previous years from projects that have cost less than the estimates. So 2.2 now looks at the schemes that have secured funding from the County Council's Local Highways Improvement Programme, which is basically a panel of County Council councillors have selected a prioritised list of schemes across the city, which has 112,000 available to allocate. Now, the schemes that have secured a contribution, which is a maximum of 10,000 per scheme, are scheme numbers N1, N3, N7, 12, 13 and 28. They have secured just over 54,500 and we require a further 23,500 in order to make those deliverable. So that's 2.2. Then 2.3, the remaining schemes that are not highway related and haven't secured funding from the County Council, the remaining budget is then selected to allocate to those new schemes, which are listed in Appendix A of the report. As you can see, there are numerous schemes within there. They do include the county's funded contribution projects, which are highlighted in the column, which shows secure funding for those projects. There are 28. There are now 27 schemes. There are 28 schemes within that list. Appendix B then goes into more detail on each suggestion. So, whilst these projects have had limited development, very limited development, we do very initial feasibility on each of the suggestions. Obviously, there's a lot of them don't move forward because there isn't the budget to make more deliverable. There is obviously still much further development required on all of these projects, further consultation with the public before anything is delivered. Should there be any negative issues from the public in terms of suggestions, then the project would return to this committee to determine the way forward. But in terms of the recommendations, obviously to approve all of the projects that are allocated funding this evening and implement them, but subject to them receiving positive consultation. So in Appendix B, there are various details on each of the projects, try to highlight some of the potential risks, issues, general comments on what is proposed. But as I say, very limited work is done at this stage, and subject to them being allocated funding, there will be much further development, both with members of the public and obviously with local ward councillors. And one final thing to mention before I open up for questions and discussion is that whilst the list of projects this evening that aren't allocated funding will remain on the list of suggested schemes to present back to the committee in future years, this year is the last year of the Environment Improvement Programme as it currently stands. It will be reviewed this year, and then the decision needs to be made as to whether it carries on in this form, in a different form, or not at all. So just to highlight that this is the last year. And I am aware that the County Council are currently asking for new suggestions already for next year's Local Highways Improvement Programme. and obviously traditionally this budget has provided the 10% third-party funding that is required to actually secure funding from that programme. I think at that point I will hand over back to the Chair.
Thank you, Andrew Preston. I don't know if there's any sort of broad questions that need to be asked now, but I would like to try and outline how I think this is quite a complicated item can proceed, but I don't think there are any broad questions to be asked at this point. I'm sure any questions that come up can be applied as we go to each part of this item. What I was going to suggest is we have on page, page 5, and do all refer to the supplementary updated report appendices because they are they're the accurate up-to-date papers. Although you need to refer to your main agenda, I think, for the from pages 47 onwards, as Andy's mentioned, for Appendix B and the details of all the schemes that are being considered, apart from, I think, item N28, which is again in the appended updated list, which relates to the real estate parking management. So we'll be referring back and forth to the main agenda items, I think, for the description, more detailed description on each scheme, but otherwise do refer to the appendices and updated sheet. So what I'm going to suggest is that slightly reorder the list of the recommendations so that it seems to be quite logical that 2.6, which is simply noting the progress of existing schemes, which you've already agreed, and they're in Appendix C of the main agenda, pages 81 to 83, and just ask for any comments or points to be made about the progress of these particular schemes, and I'm sure members or Andy himself can ask for any comments. So, looking at Appendix C, pages 81 to 83 for your main agenda, any comments or points about those schemes that are currently being progressed, or in the case of 1 or 2, not, you might notice. Appendix C, and the right page numbers. Yeah, the existing schemes that are being progressed at the moment. Any comments at all?
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Manning.
Just to say on scheme 12, due to some feedback from residents at the last minute, I did ask the project officer to delay it by a couple of weeks. And in those 2 weeks, I got a friend of mine who drives a lorry, a very large lorry, to go into the area and prove that she could reverse out comfortably in order to try and allay the residents' fears about it. So that should be, I believe, from Paul Thomas having it on Monday. So it's just a point of
Yep, point of information, yeah. Thank you, Councillor Manning. Any other comments on the progress of existing agreed schemes? No? Otherwise, what I suggest, if there's no other comment, is that we go to this recommendation now. So, can I ask all those in favour? This is recommendation 2.6, noting the progress of existing schemes. Councillor Sale.
No, I'm asking their approval on it.
No, you are. Yes, you are. We're not actually having any votes from county councils, of course, unfortunately, on this item. I'm very sorry. Police priorities, I think, is the only item that we... But by all means, comment. Feel free to comment. So, for city councillors, on 2.6, I think we do need a show of hands just to formally note the progress with existing schemes. Appendix C, all those in favour?
Yes, unanimous, Chair.
Except,
yes, we'll just call it unanimous.
Okay, so now I suggest we go on to recommendation 2.1, which is in a way a standalone item, with its annual provision and maintenance of 36 hanging baskets on Cheston High Street, with a proposal to allocate funding of £5,954. So any comments on this at all? Councillor Manning.
I was asked to make a comment by a resident. I mean, I personally am very favourable of this, and I hope the committee is as well, but there just have been a couple of complaints from residents about the early time in the morning at which these have been installed. And could that be noted, and the contractor, at 6:30 in the morning is the time I was given, could that be noted and the contractor talk to, please?
I've had that from a shopkeeper who's not on
Okay, yes, thank you, Councillor Sales. Are we suggesting that perhaps the considered contractor rules want to apply? That would be 8 AM, I think. Yes, Mr. Bond.
The reason we have the morning is simply because once you get past 7 o'clock, the high street gets chock-a-block of traffic, and the need to water the baskets means there is a stationary vehicle blocking past the carriageway. And so by doing it from 6:30, then keeping out everyone together and trying to work. So there is a very practical and sound reason for making that sooner instead of later.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. What we'll do as a committee is to explain to the contractor to operate as sensitively as possible the early hours of the morning. Okay, we've got no other comments. I think I want to take this recommendation now. Recommendation 2.1, as I've described earlier. All those in favour? Okay, thank you. Now, the remaining recommendations, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4 and 2.5, I think will be subject to the debate we're going to have. But I still want to have a particular order, which I think will be helpful, the agenda item. So that first of all is to look at 2.4, which, as Andy Preston referred to, is the minor traffic regulation orders relating to joint minor highway works. That's Appendix E. So again, in your supplementary updated papers, page 19. Any comments on those schemes implemented, those in progress, and then we'll go on to note the two we need to agree tonight, and we'll need a vote on those. But any comments on the implemented schemes and those in progress? Councillor Tanford.
Is everything on this Appendix E to be implemented?
No, it's the first section, 1 to 3 at the top, at the implemented schemes, and then the second section, 1 to 9, are the schemes in progress, and the third section, numbers 1 and 2, are those to be agreed tonight. So, any comments? Councillor Scott.
Thank you. Yes, I'd just like to comment on the traffic regulation orders in progress, particularly in respect of Hawthorne Way, Asham Road, Herbert Street and Greens Road, just to say that it is particularly pleasing that these are going ahead because there are health and safety implications in what's been happening. What has happened is that because of the narrowness of the roads and because of the impact of traffic parking there, ambulances and other emergency vehicles, including fire engines and the rubbish removal trucks, haven't been able to get down, and this is really important, as I say, in terms of health and safety. And people may not recognise, but rubbish removal has had to take place on Herbert Road on a Saturday at times, which shows how extraordinary the situation is, and therefore I'm just endorsing what's happening here, that it's extremely important that residents have continually complained about the problem that they have in terms of emergency vehicles gaining access and particularly rubbish removal. So that's a very important aspect of that, and it's positive that it's in progress.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bird.
Thank you, Chair. Just one thing, on the traffic regulations orders in progress, number 9, Fallowfields, a junction, has there been a consultation on that?
There hasn't been any. The process that the Council can insist on is an informal consultation first before the actual statutory orders process starts. And there hasn't been informal consultation on the majority of these. There are a lot of traffic orders, obviously across the other areas as well, particularly in East area as well. So we're trying to batch them all together, get them all to a certain point so that we can consult at the same time. There's a significant amount of efficiency savings to be had in advertising them all together. Per advert is £1,000, so if you did each one of these, they're £1,000 each. If you do them all together, it's £1,000 for them all. So we're trying to get them all together, to advertise them together for efficiency gains from that point of view. But we will do informal consultation, and ward councillors will be well aware of the process, approving what goes out before it goes out, and then seeing what the results are before we start the statutory process.
Councillor Manning.
Just to say, I have a petition in favour of that one, which I'm happy to share with Councillor Bird in the redacted form if she wants.
Okay, Okay, thank you. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chair. So, in order to say putting £1,000 on every one, would that, if we approve the 2 proposed schemes, would they also go in the same ad? My concern is that these take a considerable amount of time before they're actually processed. It was at this meeting last year that I proposed 2 TROs in King's Hedges, one in Ramsden Square, and I'm aware of why now, but they have still not been enacted, and I think that that's a long time, and I don't particularly want the third, what would effectively be the third one I put forward, to sort of fall by the wayside and take that long again.
Chair, we will, in terms of, we won't be able to put them, we will certainly not be putting them all together in one big advert. We will be progressing the ones that are the oldest first, so those schemes that already have approval will be going ahead of any new schemes that have approval. The statutory legal process is long in its own right, without doing any informal first. We also now have Joint Area Committee who will be determining objections. There is no Joint Area Committee plan before September. So no, at this moment in time, no objections can be determined to any traffic orders in the city until September. There is a lot of long process to go through before we get to that point. It's a 2-month lead into reports. So there is an awful long, unfortunately, an awful long process to follow with traffic orders. And it is the County Council that have to do the statutory process. City officers cannot do the actual legal process. So we're not, unfortunately, the Highway Authority, they have to do that. So it relies again on county resource. That is obviously, we work very closely with county officers as well on that, but it is a resource implication. As I said, there's an awful lot of orders now building across all 4 area committees.
Thank you, Andy. Councillor Manning.
I'm a bit confused about that comment with respect, Andy, because I have a traffic regulation or going to the Highways and Community Infrastructure Committee. So I think if there is an issue between JAC reforming and it's possible we could look into getting some of them before that to speed them up.
Want to come back on that quickly, Andy?
Potentially, I've just been told by county officers that the minor orders, but whether it's a minor order or not, but the minor traffic orders are determined by the Joint Area Committee. In terms of the highways and infrastructure, there is a couple of months lead-in time for the report, which puts us to September pretty much already anyway.
In that case, Chair, I'm happy to take an action to try and clarify that, because we've got to get them moving, haven't we?
Yeah, well, perhaps we can look for some clarification in support of this, working with perhaps some county colleagues from Andy and Lucia. Yeah, thanks. Okay. Any other comment at all? Okay, so what I propose is, because we do need to come to the recommendations later in the context of the other recommendations relating to the proposed traffic regulation order scheme, so we'll come to recommendation 2.4 at the end of our discussion. I next want to look at the items that relate to recommendation 2.2. So these are the schemes that require effectively a contribution from us, from City Council Environment Improvement Programme, in order to progress schemes that have county council funding. So as Andy mentioned earlier, there's schemes N1, N3, N7, N12, N13 and N28 in your amended, updated papers. Yeah, and the questions we had, as Dennis reminded me, because I think there's certainly one that relates to N7. So we'll do them in order, and then when we get to them, you can ask your questions. And there's also the question relating to Cheston Road cycling provision as well. That's the same. Yes, it's okay, fine, thanks, okay. So first of all though, so what I propose we do is look at each item, have any comments, and then I would suggest that we go to suggestions about whether to approve or whether we think there are any reasons to defer the schemes. And do remember that in the context of the amount of funding we have, we've got about, I think about 4 times as much in total that we could potentially spend. Of course we cannot do so because we don't have that amount of money. So we have to be very careful about how the schemes we do decide to allocate money to. again, I'm sure as Andy would back up, we have the contribution from this area committee will generate further money from the county council. So we do put at risk, if we do not agree to those contributions, those county councils, the county council funding for those schemes. So if we look at N1, which on your main updated list, Appendix A, and page 9, and it's a scheme relating to on Fen Road, adjacent to the former Penny Ferry Public House and the Hayling Way. And it's a proposal for £1,000 from this committee, which would then enable a total scheme of 11,000 with 10,000 from the county council to go ahead. So any comments on this scheme? Yes, Councillor Bird.
Andy, I wonder, could you say whether this part of M1 is going to be part of the station improvement area or not?
Andy?
No, it's not a plan to be included in that that I'm aware of at this stage. And in terms of the Fen Road and separate improvements, then as this committee is aware, the existing budget for that is quite restrictive for what the aspirations are for that. So this does really require, I suggest, the 10k to be secured from the county to deliver this, which is quite a potentially beneficial improvement.
Okay. If there are no other comments, then we'll just move to whether we want to support this application. So all those in favour?
That's 7 votes, Chair.
Okay, that's agreed. And what Andy's going to do, I think given our decision on the hanging basket, so he's already got his rolling spreadsheet, which is totting up the figures, and as we go to the evening, we'll see what funding we have left. So it's a great excitement. Okay, so next one is N3, again on page 9, and Brimley Road Verge Enforcement Scheme. Can I just say a comment myself about this, as I'm sort of promoting councillor. There is an option with this scheme to commit £1,000 only from this committee, which will then generate £10,000 from the county council and an £11,000 scheme. But we could commit £15,000 for a £25,000 scheme in total. I've had to have a think about this, and a scheme at committing £1,000 to this committee would certainly deal with some of the issues which are near the entrance from Roland Close to Arby Primary School. Therefore, I would be happy to, my own personal view, other Arby councillors might have another view, to accept that as a proposal. I'd be welcome to hear any comments about that. Okay. Do you have a comment, Councillor Sales, on this one?
I said you need to do.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Right. Well, can I suggest this is not yet an official recommendation. Depending on how the other schemes fall, if there is money available later in the evening to fund the full amount, we may well have that option. But for the time being, I'm suggesting that we propose £1,000 from this committee so that we can make a start and progress this scheme. All in favour of that?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you, Glenn. Okay, so we move on to N7. And N7 is on page 11 of the updated sheet. This relates to Cheston Road near Elizabeth Way, and improvements in particular to the signal crossing over Elizabeth Way at that point. Again, the proposal is for £1,000 from this committee, and then that would release £10,000 from the County Council for £11,000 scheme. Any comments on this? Councillor Manning.
Chair, I was just going to suggest with respect that when maybe there are members of the public who wanted to actually speak to this item, would it be possible to allow them to speak first?
Yeah, absolutely. They've got their comments on this particular item. So yeah, but I always take members of the public first.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Francis Skeffington. I live in the area on the stretch of road that N7 refers to. That's the cul-de-sac end of Chesterton Road. That's the stretch that runs from Elizabeth Way, where there is a pedestrian and cycle crossing, to the corner of Church Street and Chesterton High Street. It's a cul-de-sac for cars because there's only one way in, taking a turn from Chesterton High Street. But pedestrians and cyclists have access from both ends. They have access from the Church Street end, and a number of us on the street have been concerned because there is potential conflict between pedestrians and cyclists. The reason for that can be seen, first of all, from the Church Street end. A cyclist approaching the cul-de-sac end of Chesterton High Street of Chesterton Road, from Chesterton High Street, sees from left to right a big high wall, a pedestrian footpath, a big tree, a recommended cycle route, and a bus shelter, in that order. Now, to take the recommended cycle route, that cyclist has to bump down 4 inches of curb, because there isn't a dropped curb at that point. So most cyclists avoid bumping down 4 inches of curb. They go the other side of the tree along the pedestrian footway, which is very narrow at that point, and there is not room for a cyclist and a pedestrian to pass that way at the same time. At the other end of that section of Chesterton Road, there is the crossing from Elizabeth Way, again looking at the cyclist approaching the section in question of Chesterton Road. They come across Elizabeth Way and they face staggered half barriers in that sort of way, and it makes them do a zigzag. Now, unfortunately, the zag of that zigzag flows the cyclist onto the pedestrian footway. The 2 half gates are the wrong way round, and there is a marking on the road that says cyclists should go that way onto the roadway, but it's almost invisible. It's been almost worn out. Scheme N7 would aim to alleviate at least both those problems and separate cyclists and pedestrians more safely, and I would commend it to the committee.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Any other speakers on that? Okay. Yes.
I'm Kimon Lysopoulos. I live at 204 Chesterton Road, so also on this section on the south side, and our house adjoins the pavement which the cyclists cycle on. You frequently see clashes between pedestrians and cyclists, particularly people coming out of the houses. I have 2 small children. One was knocked over, one was hit, and there have been innumerable near misses. Cyclists, I cycle myself, and I'm embarrassed to say that cyclists seem to have the attitude that they own it and pedestrians should get out of their way on the pavement. It would be very easy to sort this out for a relatively small amount of money, and I agree with everything Francis said. I don't know what the proposals are, but presuming they're sensible, I'd like to see them supported.
Councillor O'Reilly.
I'm just going to add to what this gentleman just said. I use that patch of road quite a lot. I think when we meet at the Shirley, it's the route that I take from home to get to North Area Committee meetings. And in my personal collection of god-awful patches of cycle route, that comes pretty high. And it's probably up amongst the highest patches of god-awful cycle route in the north of the city. It's dreadful. It's absolutely dreadful. If you're not paying strict attention, even if you are, the cycle signage seems to take you straight through the barriers, up onto a pavement, and then either down a 4-inch curb or through a tree. I mean, it's absolutely atrocious, and I thoroughly recommend that for £1,000, if we can trigger something, does something about that, we definitely should.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Bird?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree as well. As a pedestrian, it's terrible. I've been along that road a million times, so I'd like this scheme to go ahead.
Okay, thanks very much. No, if there are no other comments, I'm sure some of the detail, obviously there will be consultation on all these items before they do actually finally go through, so there will be more detail about how the scheme is going to work. So, right, Councillor Manning and then Councillor Sales.
Just as you asked the question about consultation, it's probably worth noting that this is one of the schemes we've got down at the County Council as possibly using the New York style of implementation. So this is where you can actually test it live in the street and not make permanent changes until residents are happy. The obvious reason this is applicable is because the dropped curve can be easily replicated with a ramp for a short period of time, just to see whether cyclists do actually use it or not. So it's be one of those ones where it will be very easy to make sure residents are happy with the changes.
Thank you. Councillor Sales.
I just wondered whether or not, Chair, the two people who take the job to turn up to be directly involved in the consultation. Get the details.
Yep, I'm sure. Mr. Bond.
It's not the scheme that I'm quite happy to support. But there is a great lake of Chester, which is actually at the end of Church Street, on the drop curve leading onto this section of Nightmare Road. And every time it rains, there is a very large puddle forms. Not quite as spectacular as Garbury Road one, but still deep enough to deter. Is it there?
It's in here.
Good.
It's sorted already.
Yeah.
It's raining there now in the last 2 months.
Does it work?
Okay. Yeah, we don't. Yes. Helpful to have comments about the schemes and a good point, but we can't really get into a debate about the various merits. Do feel free to raise your hand if you've got a particular question or point about the specific details of the scheme as we go through them. Okay, so any other comments on N7? Are we all happy? So can we move to a vote? Approve? Do you all approve?
Yeah. That's unanimous again, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we move on to N12. And N12 is on page 12. And this relates to Mariners Way. Improvements to separate pedestrian cycle movement in Mariners Way on the east side of Lisbon Bridge. Again, £1,000 requested from this committee, which would trigger £10,000 from the County Council and £11,000 scheme. So any comments on this scheme? Okay, no points from the floor. Oh, Councillor Tunnerbird.
Yeah, just could I see a little plan, or how is it going to work? I cycle down there fairly frequently. I'm just interested to know what it's going to consist of.
There's some indication on page 60 of your main agenda, number N12. It's got an aerial photograph, I think, of Mariners Way and where it goes under Elizabeth Way Bridge, and a photograph of the current sort of access point. But Councillor Manning, do you want to explain these further?
Yeah, they obviously need to be worked out in detail, but the idea is that the points where you cross through are just in the wrong place, and they also bring cyclists and pedestrians into conflict. So the idea is to give a desire line to cyclists that's easy to get through, and give a safe place for pedestrians to get through, so you don't have the two. I mean, obviously we need to work it out in detail, but that's the gist of it, because they're basically just in the wrong place as you come out. And possibly what the picture might not make clear is the fact you've got a raised curve on the left-hand side, so you come out slightly to the right than if it was actually all flat.
Okay, thanks for that. Any other comments? Otherwise, we're happy. Indicate you will vote in favour of this scheme. All those in favour?
Again, that's unanimous, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So we move on to N13, which is also on page 12 of the updated agenda list. It is Carlton Way verge reinforcement. Again, something I've been promoting. I don't know anything particularly about it, except I think it's a very important scheme on quite a high-profile road that goes through Arbury, and certainly requires considerable improvement in terms of the local environment. This application from our committee for £5,000. That would trigger £10,000 from the County Council and £15,000 scheme. So, any other comments, particularly from Arbury councillors? Councillor O'Reilly.
Yeah, I mean, as Councillor Todd Jones and Councillor Sells are well aware, this is one of the issues that comes up again and again and again and again and again in residents, and it is particularly bad in Carlton Way. It seems to me that if we can make a difference to Carlton Way as well, it's a kind of gateway to the entire north of the ward, north of the city, and it's a particularly worthwhile area to make these improvements to, because it's not just the local residents that see the difference.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Thank you. I'd like to endorse the comments that have been made both by Councillor Todd Jones and Councillor O'Reilly, that this is a road that one can see could be really a very positive vista. And so an improvement such as this is the beginning plus the trees that were said to be going to be planted there at an earlier North Area Committee, they are the beginnings of a real improvement to that area, which, as has been said, requires improvement, and as I have said, can be a really important vista in the division between Arbury and West Chesterfield. So I very strongly support this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Scott. Shame you can't actually vote, but nevertheless, your support is noted. So, any other comments on this scheme? Otherwise, we will hopefully move to the vote, and hopefully in support. But all those in favour?
Again, unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. And finally, we have N28, which is not in the original main agenda, but it's on your updated sheet. And this relates to the V estate parking management. This proposal is £500 from this committee, and that would trigger £4,500 from the County Council and a £5,000 scheme. So any comment on this one? Councillor Manning.
Obviously, as I don't vote, I should probably declare an interest in that I live on the V. So yeah. And I believe the officer will be able to confirm that they've received a number of emails in support of this. Some of them slightly too late, but it was because we didn't know this was going to be on tonight until we had time. So
I received 2 emails this afternoon, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Reilly.
I was just going to say that from the, I've been involved in the scheme, but I think for the amount of money that's being asked of this committee for that kind of outcome, I think it's probably a worthy use of £500, and that we should support this.
Andy Preston.
Just to add a little bit more information, the proposal is to create a parking zone, so we're not going to completely cover the area of the yellow lines, because that will completely change the aesthetics of the development potentially, but also the yellow lines are very difficult to maintain on concrete block paving, which is the majority of the development, so which will disappear very quickly. The other thing to mention is that our refuse team have an absolute nightmare in accessing bin stores and accessing this estate generally. So there is a benefit there to the City Council's refuse team in accessing this estate also.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, I'm happy to go into vote then. All those in support? I'm afraid you have to ignore the 3 for the Okay, thank you. Well, that is the that concludes that little section which relates to 2.2, and as a consequence of that, I think we should find, according to my notes anyway, we have I think it's something like, is it 62? 66. Oh, that's right. Yes. Indeed, yes, that concurs with my notes. No, right. 66,777, of which we have 22 schemes remaining, which my calculations are total £162,500. So we have some hard decisions to make relating to 2.3, which relate to Appendix A in the report, the items excluding those we've just been dealing with in 2.2. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to make a point. And for anybody that was around at the same time last year, you will have heard the point pretty much made then. We know here that there is a very, very limited amount of money to be allocated and to be effectively shared between 4 wards. Yet still, the same people behave like they're a child in a sweet shop and think, I want that one, 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 rather than have a look at the amount of money that is available, pick 2, maybe 3 schemes in and around their area that would benefit their area, that would environmentally improve their area, which is what this is, the Environmental Improvement Programme. I have done, as I did last year, in fact one of them's actually not in this bit now, it would gone off into the traffic regulation order abyss, never to be seen again, or not for a while anyway. So King's Head is in order to ensure that there's a fair share of the money and the programmes to be spread around the North Area Committee. I've got one single item remaining on this programme that came as a result of talking to people in that ward. I think that's the way it should be done. I don't believe that we need to have this massive list of schemes that are, you know, at the end of the day, we can't afford them all. Why put forward schemes that amount to more than you know you're going to get? Anyway, that's my gripe from last year. That's my gripe from this year. Probably won't be mine next year, so that'll be good.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Your points are noted, and I think we would all recognise actually we probably need a better criteria as well in which to decide how we progress these schemes in the future, and that may come about, we hope. So having said all that, we just move on to discuss the items that relate to the recommendation 2.3, and again we'll move through in order and take any comments, and then I'll propose we vote or defer, because as we've heard from Andrew Preston, schemes will remain on the list, whatever the format of the kind of environment improvement programme will be in the future. There will be opportunities, I'm sure, for these schemes to come forward again. So if we go to the first item relating to this recommendation, which is N2, Councillor Price has alluded to it, Campkin Road hanging baskets, scheme proposed from this committee of £2,500. Any comments? Councillor Smart.
So this area is quite mixed. It's got some areas of beauty and other areas that aren't so beautiful, and I think that spending this small amount of money will help this area to look a lot better. I think, you know, with other moves that we've done to do with clearing up litter around Tesco and the shops around there, I think it's something that I really support. I think it'll help the area to just turn the corner and look a lot better with the trees and so on.
Councillor O'Reilly.
Having just got preliminary approval for two fairly important elements of EIPs for Arbury, I'd be slightly scared now to try and refuse this. But equally, along with Councillor Smart, it's an area that could use some nice things. I think it would appreciate prettifying, I think, that particular area, so I'm minded to approve it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Oh, okay, well, we'll move to a vote. Are all those in favour of this scheme?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Without council voting as well. So we move on to the next scheme under this particular recommendation, which is N4. N4 is the Hayling Way Link Park resurfacing, if I can call it that. This is proposed at £6,000 from this committee. And we got any comments about this particular scheme? I would draw your attention to, as well, to in the main agenda, the description, which I think is very helpful. Relating to this one, it's on page 50. It's called Hayling Way driveway resurfacing. Any comments at all? Councillor O'Reilly.
Just slightly concerned that we still require agreement approval from landowners and other stakeholders. Where are we actually getting that?
Andy Preston?
In terms of the amount, as I said, in terms of the amount of development for all of these projects, there is very little office time available to develop things to a certain stage in the process. Obviously, with a considerable amount of existing projects to move forward that have allocated funding, we struggle. And at the end of the day, lots of schemes in this list won't move forward because the allocations aren't available. So unfortunately, we haven't gone to that stage of negotiation without any security of budget to actually deliver the project at this stage. So that's a potential risk. I don't know whether Councillor Manning will be able to mention anything that he's had in the discussions over and above that with the capital services.
Councillor Manning?
Yeah, I mean the cabinet services are aware of this bid, so in terms of that, it's going to be quite straightforward. I mean, I kind of almost don't want to, but I kind of just got to say something about Councillor Price's comments. I will make no apologies for if residents come to me and ask me to get something on a funding list for getting it on a funding list. Obviously, it's up to this committee to decide which ones go forward and which ones don't. And in terms of all these schemes, I've got, for 3/4 of them, I've got petitions with a number of signatures on them. I've got emails from various people, visits from various people, various residents associations. So I will not make a single apology for putting out a lot of energy and a lot of time into getting a lot of schemes forward.
Thank you, Councillor Manning. I mean, I do appreciate what you say, but I think we have to balance that, I think, against being judicious in the way you put schemes forward and to recognise that this is for the whole of North area. I'm not saying that any of us would get lots of emails and lots of queries and lots of comments, and we could be putting a lot more schemes forward, but it's a question of getting the right balance, I think. I've got Mr. Bond.
Attended the meeting on the 19th, and my last question there by a lady who lives alongside this path, and that was whether this in fact is part of the access for the eastern approach from the new bridge to the railway station. In which case, would this be a temporary measure? In which case, given that's supposed to be open by 2015 or whenever, is it something that needs to be taken in a wider context?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bond. Thank you for your point. Councillor Bird.
Thank you, Chair. I've got concerns about this one as well. So the access, the big gate and everything, if that's a walkway for residents, I think it needs to be looked at more for access for people with buggies and mums with prams and wheelchair users.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Manning and Councillor O'Reilly.
Just to answer Mr. Bond's point, I think it's a very good one. It could be, depending on which options are chosen, because I think that's quite a good reason for deferring this.
Councillor O'Reilly.
That was actually going to be my suggestion. I don't think it's a bad idea to improve it, but if it could be improved as part of another scheme, we should probably defer it and find out.
Yeah.
Given that proposal from the promoter, can I suggest we go to a vote on to defer this scheme? All those in favour of deferring?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Now we move on to N5, the Sherborne Close Tree. This is proposing £3,000 from this committee for this scheme. Again, on your main, the updated Appendix A, I think we're on page 10. Yep, page 10. So any comments about this particular scheme at all? Councillor Manning?
Just to highlight that I personally and the next door neighbours and the City Council's tree team spent a lot of time trying to work out why this went. So part of the reason for bringing this scheme forward is it just looks a little bit embarrassing when you go back to residents and say, don't know why it went. I'm not saying it's necessarily the most important scheme on this list, but I think that's the reason, that it just looks a little bit embarrassing when things go missing and we can't actually work out why.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Manning. We've noted the support of the City Council tree team as well. Any other comments about this one? Otherwise, I think we'll probably, yep. Okay, all those in favour of this scheme?
Again, unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we move on to N6, which is also on page 10 of the updated sheet. This is the Fallowfield Green replanting. Proposal here is for £5,000 from this committee to deliver this scheme. Again, any comments or points about this scheme? Councillor Price?
Thank you, Chair. Other than to note, however, there is a County Council Section 10 scheme proposed in this area. Do we want to duplicate?
Councillor Manning and Councillor Sales?
Just to agree with Councillor Price, since I put this bid in, it's become apparent there is more S106 money available for the whole of the Fen Road area. Well, though this bit of it won't get 150,000, the point is well made that because there's other money that could go to this, I think it would be better to try and get county money rather than spend the city AP money. But that happens since I put it in.
Yep, that's a good point. Councillor White?
I'm just really glad Richard Taylor's recording this, so we've got Councillor Manning agreeing with Councillor Price on record.
Yeah, good point.
Statistically, it has to happen occasionally.
And it seems logical to me that this is another one that can be deferred.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for appointing councillor. So all those in favour of deferring this scheme?
Unanimous, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we go on to item N8. That's on page 11 of the appendix sheets. This relates to Franks Lane railings. The proposal for £5,000 from this committee for this scheme. So again, any comments or points? No comments or points. Councillor Price. Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Chair. Again, reading officers' comments here, it does look as though there are some potential problems and that there might be another solution. I mean, would the other solutions mentioned here be something that, again, is worth exploring before we award money to the scheme?
Yeah, looks like the promoting council is nodding away, so again, I suggest we go to a decision on to deferring this one. All those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
So item N9, also on page 11 of the updated sheets, is Hailing Way green protection. Proposal here for £5,000 again for this committee to deliver this scheme. Again, any comments or points about this one? Councillor Manning.
Just again that this was suggested by the County Conservatives officer. So.
I didn't quite catch that. You proposing? Sorry, what are you proposing?
No, I was just saying this came from the Camp Conservatives officer. But again, I would suggest what you do, despite my disagreement with Councillor Price, I take his point, and I suggest that maybe what you do is see how much money is left at the end and then come back to this one. Because it does cause a lot of problems for people.
Okay, Councillor Sale?
I was going to say, what's that to do with the Camp Conservatives? It's such an attractive project to this, it's on their land. They asked for it.
Okay, Councillor Smart.
So I don't know if Councillor Manning can answer this, if you're on the sort of people that promoted it. I'm just not quite clear why you want to do this. It seems like it's a path by a river and it's compacted earth. So what? What's the problem?
So you've got a natural path, and then you've got an area of grass alongside the path on both sides. And what's happening because of where the path angles, people are cycling over continuously, or treading over because it gets busy, and that entire area of grass is now horrible. So it's all just muddy and churned up, whereas it should actually was on all the other sides. It's nice looking grass. It's just got messed up basically. So it needs to. There's something needs to be. Otherwise, it's always going to look muddy and horrible.
Yeah, thank you for that. If you look at pages 56 and 57 on the main agenda, you've got the description of the scheme and representation and photographs there. Councillor O'Reilly.
I do note again that there are potential problems with it, and also there might be other ways of achieving the same ends, really, of preventing people from taking the desire line or looking at what that desire line is and why to improve it. I have no problem with coming back to the state and seeing what we've got left in the pot. Do you have that? So should we just leave this till the end and come back?
Yep, yeah, thank you. Can you give the microphone? Thank you. I think Nod sort of agreeing with that. Promoting council happy to defer that one, so show of hands, agree to defer that scheme.
Unanimous, Chair.
Come back.
Yeah, right, absolutely, yep, absolutely right, sorry. Depending on... No, I think, yeah, no, I'm quite happy to, we'll come back to that, absolutely. I've now made a note here on my papers, we're coming back to this scheme. So, we go on to N10. Sorry, I didn't even have a chance to describe it. Cheston High Street, Scotland Road. Councillor Perry.
Thank you. I got to go first, I think, because I haven't spoken before. My issues with this scheme mostly go down to the description of it in the agenda, this agenda, which is page 58 of the main agenda. It says this cut-through has poor surface which sees water pooling during rainy periods. It also has frequent complaints of being poorly lit. And then it says commission some artwork along the floor as the solution.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with what my colleagues have said. Also, it's a safety issue. The lighting down there is really bad. I'd like to see better lighting and the resurfacing done. Thank you.
Councillor Manning.
Chair, what I was going to suggest was that I actually put this in as an LHI for this year, for the coming year, which would get us the money back, essentially. So we take it out.
So we can take
the public art will still be funded by the S106 public art, but if we get the LHI, that could come to that.
Okay. With that question, we can take by Councillor Smart.
So with the lighting, so the council's replacing all its street lights over the coming months and years, I believe. So maybe this one hasn't been replaced, and maybe it needs replacement more quickly. And if it has one of these new bulbs and much brighter, it might just be a matter of doing that to increase the lighting, perhaps, in that spot.
Councillor Arsania?
Thank you, Chair. In respect of the lighting, I would have to ask, because I've been asked about some lighting in my ward on Nunn's Way, and there's actually problems underground with the actual wires and copper fibres and things, so this is why the lights are dim. So I'd need to take further instructions from Highways. It may not just be that it needs a brighter light bulb, there might be deeper, more serious issues.
Thank you for that. Councillor Manning.
Yeah, I was going to say, the part of the lighting here is actually that the light gets masked by a lot of the year by a tree. But yes, it could be done as part of that, but I still want to get some extra low-level lighting in there as part of it. But I said, I think I'd put this in as an LHI for this year and come back next year and ask for £1,000 and assuming it's still there.
Okay, thanks for that. Perhaps we can commission some really artistic lighting, which would capture all issues. We're agreeing to please take this out. Performance lighting. Take this out of this proposal here. Is that right? So all those in favour?
That's 8, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. So now we move on to bollard. This is N11. Page 12. This is High Street by the Haymakers Pub. Again, we've got the description on page 59 of the main agenda as well. Again, any comments or questions about this scheme? Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Chair. My initial response to this was, it's a bollard, it's a ground. But looking at the pictures there, I'd actually be a little bit concerned about what the bollard would do there for access along the pavement. I mean, how close could you actually get it there? And do we actually know, again, just going from what's on the agenda here, why that previous bollard was removed?
Councillor Manning.
I believe.
And then let Councillor Manning respond, and we'll come to you, Mr. Bond.
The reason it didn't get replaced, though, which is the more important point, is because it happened when the Haymakers was closed for about 2.5 years or whenever it was. In terms of the answer of it's wide enough to get through. The issue is that when you're going along there, the road is exactly the same level as the pavement. So there's literally nothing to stop you. Now, whilst I'm not saying that bollard is going to stop, a car travelling at speed, it is going to stop someone coming off on a bike or something like that. So the idea behind it was just put it back, but that's why it wasn't replaced rather than why it got rid of.
Well, Mr. Bond, we have a quick point.
Yeah, these are wooden bollards, and I wonder whether, in fact, they are robust enough for this location, given it's right on a T-junction.
So Councillor O'Reilly.
Why is that section of road the same level as the pavement? Is it there to actually make it easier to cross? Because if it is, then sticking a bollard in the middle of it seems to be a bit dull.
No, we don't have an answer to that, I don't think.
It's a traffic calming place.
Right, okay. Right, okay. Do we have any view on this? Do we want to approve this scheme? Councillor Smart.
I'm not completely clear about what's happening, so we're asking to put another bollard in, I think. So I'm just concerned that it's going to make it accessible people with a double buggy or a big wheelchair, or one of those motorised disabled scooters. Are they going to have to go to the road? Is that not worse than what?
Councillor Manning may have a response.
It's definitely accessible as there before, but can I suggest what you do, given the amount of money that you just come back at the end and see if there's any money left for it. But it definitely is accessible because it was there before and it was there for many, many years.
Okay, that's a fair point. We'll come back and revisit the bollard. Okay. Okay, now we come on to N14, which is on page 13, I think, page 13 of the appended papers, and there's detail on page 63 of the main agenda. And I've got a kind of proposal here because we have N15, Sherborne Close, which also relates to drop curb as well as some associated pavement improvements. N23 later on, which is on page 14 of the appended sheets, again relating to drop curbs in Ferrers Way. And we also have N25 on page 15 of the appended sheets, which relates to a proposal for North Area Ward drop crossing improvements at a cost of 25,000. My thinking is that we either include the specific schemes, but I don't think that means we probably have to exclude the North Area Ward or vice versa. And I'd be welcome to do a bit of debate and some comments on all four of those items, because they're all obviously related and I think ought to be considered together. Councillor Manning.
Chair, I was going to suggest exactly the same thing as part of those schemes. I mean, what I was going to suggest we do is take N25 as a lump sum and then take 3 schemes into it, and then, so that's 3 specific drop curbs we've got as part of the 25,000. Then you've got the rest of the 25,000 has to identify some more, and then maybe we come back at the end and see if there's any money to do both, essentially. And obviously I can talk about the 2 individual drop curbs and why they're there, but I think for the second one of mine, which is, sorry, bear with me, the Sherborne Close one, I think that amount of money will drop when we actually, the scheme, my description wasn't good enough. It's actually only supposed to be 1 dropped curve. The levelling off section obviously is going to cost a different amount of money, so I think when we actually do it, there'll be more left in the 25,000, if that makes sense.
That does make sense, and I would imagine if we do agree the N25, the 25,000, I would have thought that associated works relating to drop curbs may come into the equation anyway, depending obviously on, I guess, the proximity. But yes, I concur with your suggestion. Do you have a comment? Councillor O'Reilly.
Yeah, I was going to suggest something quite similar, but the reason being just that it gives us a bit more of a strategic view, in that we tend to pick up on this stuff because it's mentioned to us on the doorstep, or specific residents come and talk to us about a specific need for a drop curb. And what we're not necessarily doing is looking at the areas where there's most need, and I think deferring, my own suggestion I think was here, deferring that, or wiping those out and going for N25, which is the more strategic North Area one, could allow us to include that, but perhaps we will actually find somewhere that's actually slightly greater need, in which case, I think local councils can make that determination from the larger amount of money, given that we know that it's not going to happen tomorrow. So I would say that we drop all the drop curb suggestions and go for N25. So not defer them, drop them.
Okay, well that's a proposal to agree to N25 and drop the other schemes, N14, 15 and 23. So we'll take a more strategic view and take them with progressing N25. Any other comments on this? Councillor Bird.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I brought this forward because the north area is very bad for drop curbs. I went down most of the streets in East Chesterton, and I would say every single street had bad drop curbs. And it was the same in King's Hedges when I've been round there, and some in Arbury. So that's why I suggested 25,000, but if we could get some more in the pot, that'd be fantastic. Because 5,000 for 1 drop curb, is that right? Or is that for the both?
Andy Preston.
it's very difficult to put a budget to all the drop curves because there are scenarios that increase the cost on a site-specific basis. The average cost of a drop crossing, so two crossings either side of the road, is 2.5 to 3k, 2.5 to 3,000. That's your average. There are scenarios where, in terms of gradients and altering the gradient of the path over a larger area, obviously increases the cost. So it is very much site-specific. You could say on average it's £2.5 to £3,000.
Okay, Councillor Manning, then Councillor Scott.
Just to say that, sort of take half of what Councillor O'Reilly said. The Kinross Road one I really would like to keep in as a specific suggestion because there's a very large section of housing which I know has elderly people in it, and they access the co-op via that route. So it's a very specific reason. So I would actually like to leave that one in there as part of the 25,000 specifically.
Councillor Scott.
Yeah, thank you. I think we have to think about strategy, and we have to also think about resources. And if we're going piecemeal, fixing up drop curves because it's been said, somebody brings it to our attention, it's not the best use of resources. It's far better, in my opinion, to adopt Councillor Bird's proposition, because then you send out a team to do the survey, to come back with the results. They will pinpoint which are the most urgent, that have to be completed with the greatest urgency. And also, we then know where also there are defects and there need to be drop curves put in. So it's a better use of resources, a better use of time, it's better use of money.
Thank you. Councillor Onasanya and then Councillor Sale.
I have nothing further to add. I concur with what Councillor Scott said.
Thank you. Councillor Sale.
Out of all the schemes that are listed here, and possibly some other ones, don't they need to be, I agree with effectively on the front, but don't they then need to be assessed on some sort of priority? Maybe that's what we should do.
I think that's a very...
You've already mentioned one, which sounds a good argument, and we probably support that. But we just can't put running around in the day. You are all running around in the dark, but you don't know every street in every ward where the priorities are.
Well, thank you, Councillor Sales, for very helpful comments. Your dulcet tones without a microphone.
No responsibility.
But I think we actually have one or two very specific points made about strategic overview relating to these schemes. So I would suggest I take on.
I'm sorry, Chair, but I don't see a priority list anywhere, or a big list of the projects which are going to entertain.
I would have thought the point about N25 is that officers will go away and we'll look at the strategic needs across North area relating to these kind of schemes. Yeah. So
what are you going to do?
I take on board what Councillor Manning has said about. Sorry, we have a comment from Mr. White.
Can I just talk to Kevin Price for a second, because we discussed on several occasions the area just outside with the disabled space by the shop, the fact that in winter time it floods. We've had a little bit of response 2 years ago where we had it tarmacked where there was mud and the lorries were parking. We've made a little bit of improvement. You did say that the funds were around, you did say that then they were missing, and then you said, I think recently, if I misquoted, then correct me, that we found the funds. I'm not quite sure what's going on, and my neighbours are asking me questions, why hasn't anything been done in the last 18 months? And I also see it not on any list of proposals as well.
Yes, Councillor Price.
Whilst you're quite right, it's not any of these lists because it's a scheme that was already worked up. I think Mr. Preston might be able to help you. It was 2.5, 3 years ago, and there was funding. It was county funding. The guy that was doing it was working temporarily for the council and left, and it was, well, you raised it again with me, and I've asked where that is. As far as I'm aware, it's still sitting somewhere within county coffers.
Andy Preston.
Chair, that is correct. It is County Council Section 106 funding. That there was some protracted discussions about process. Obviously, the City Council and my team developed proposals. They still require consultation with the local area, which we will be doing. But there was quite a convoluted discussion about transfer of funds between the city and the county council. We have come to the arrangement now of how that's supposed to work, so we will be consulting on it very shortly with a bid to, from the results of that consultation, see with ward councillors, consulting with the ward council, actually implementing what was proposed.
So can I just ask one question? Other question.
Yeah.
If we don't do anything else, can we get rid of the water this year? So that we don't have a massive puddle where people are trying to enter the shop, if we don't do anything else?
I can certainly look at that with our property services team, who are obviously responsible for the premises, and ensure that is resolved. It's more of a maintenance issue than an improvement issue, so that's obviously far more urgent. So yes, I will escalate that within the City Council.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Andy. I suggest we move on with this. And I take on board what Councillor Manning has said, but Kinross Road will be one of those schemes that will be considered in a strategic overview. And I suggest that, as has been put forward, we effectively, but we're not taking N14, 15, 20 out of the scheme, they'll all be considered, but we take this as a group and put those schemes as consideration for N25 and support N25 on that basis. Everyone happy with that? Councillor Manning?
Sorry, just one tiny suggestion. Happy with that. Just one tiny suggestion that what we actually need to do as a committee is come up with a framework for how the officers should make the choice. And I'd happily work with Councillor Burns and officers on that, and maybe that framework should come back to this committee.
Yeah,
there are lots of different reasons you could decide to have a drop curve, and we need to give them a framework for what we want to prioritise, and then they go off and do the survey.
That's a fair point. Andy Preston?
I would just like to exercise my caution about officers assessing the need for drop curves across the whole of the north area of the city. I am quite concerned about resources required to do that. That's quite a large area of the city and requires quite a large amount of resource to assess every single area of the city. What I would suggest is that as is being done in other areas, such as in the city centre, is that we look at consultation with those that actually require them. So the less able-bodied and some parent groups maybe that use pushchairs and so on and so forth, to try and get some actual direction in terms of where the problems are, and then we will look at assessing the issues in those areas. I don't think we can have the resources to do a blanket survey of the whole of the north area of the city at this stage.
Okay, thanks for that. And I think there needs to be a lot of liaison with ward councillors over the schemes that they want to put into a strategic overview. So with those comments in mind, we move to N25 on the basis that I've just explained about effectively including N14 and 15 and 23 in that strategic overview. All those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair?
Okay, so that's 25k at one fell swoop added to the spreadsheet. We move on to N16. This is Fallowfield Frank Lane cut through. This is on page 13. That's the appended sheets. And just checking on the main agenda for the description on page 66. So any comments on this scheme? Councillor Manning?
Just like, this is one I get a lot of complaints about, but I would suggest it's another one we come back to after the other schemes have gone through because of the difficulty of actually coming up with a solution. I went on site with a couple of engineers and we spent a long time trying to work out how you could do it that wouldn't be inaccessible, basically. So I would suggest it's one we could come back to.
Okay, so we will come back to that scheme, see how we get on with the rest of the schemes in the agenda. So we're going to come back to N16. N17, Fallowfield planting. Again, this is looking at £22,000. It's page 13 on the appended sheets and a description on page 67 on the main agenda. Councillor Price.
Far too much, Chair. Let's not bother with it.
Councillor Manning.
I think I want to take this back to a later committee because I have no idea how it got to £22,000. I suspect it may be either a misexplanation or a misinterpretation of what I was proposing. Or both.
Andy Preston.
Chair, obviously the issue with this area of Fallowfields is the planters that exist are I won't say ridiculously small, but they are ridiculously small to actually maintain any planting within them. And that's why they don't have planting within them, because it's died off and it's been taken out. So a lot of them we're recommending to be removed, but those that we're obviously trying to not remove all of the greenery from that area, because it obviously gives a great impact. So the reason for the budget is to actually create some planting areas that are sustainable, and that's where the costs come in creating planting areas that are sustainable.
Yeah, indeed, there was some issues that could still be looked at, so I'm suggesting deferral. Yeah, okay, we'll have to support that. All those in agreement with deferring?
Yep, that's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. So we move on to N18, Ashfield Court replanting. That's on page 13 of the additional sheets. And on page 69 of the main agenda. Description there, and any comments about the scheme? Councillor O'Reilly.
Chair, this looks like it's going to be straightforward and effective, and therefore I'm minded to vote towards approving.
Councillor Manning?
Yeah, just otherwise I'd encourage you to support, because it's one of those sort of areas that's just a bit underloved, and it's really simple to improve, basically.
Okay, thank you for that. So I don't think we need any more debate on that. All those in favour of this scheme?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. So we move on to N19, Junction Milton Road and Green End Road. This is on page 14 of the additional sheets. And again, you have more of a description on page 70 of the main agenda. So any comments about this particular scheme? Councillor Manning.
Again, I suggest taking off the list, because since this list I've got the whole of Green End Road onto a North Area Section 106 list for about between 250 and 750k, so I think it should be taken off in that respect, because it would be done as part of that.
So we're going to take this off the proposal. Yep. I think we did form show of hands. All those in support of that proposal?
Yep, unanimous, Chair.
Okay, and we move on to N20. Cam Causeway planting, page 14 of the additional sheets, and again you have your normal description, including officers' comments on page 72. Any comments, Councillor Price?
Well, I refer you to the comment I made earlier. I think far too much of, we've got 31,277 left, and this is going to take 20,000 of it. I don't think so.
Okay, Councillor Gorsuch.
Just to reiterate what Councillor Price has said, according to this, it's high risk, the residents of the cause. Wouldn't a TRO along the lines of King's Hedges Road and Ramsden Square be more in order?
Councillor Bird.
Yes, I agree. I think really what I would like to do before you went on the scheme on Cam Causeway is actually go and have a consultation with the residents, because a lot of them there want more parking. It's a wide road as it is, but people do park treble 1, 2, 3 along the road, so perhaps we could do something like that.
Okay, well that might be a future scheme, but Councillor Manning.
Yeah, I'm happy to make this one of these ones we sort of come back to and probably be enough money left, but I probably should just say that I do have a substantial petition in favour of doing something here, and I think it is one of those areas that could do with injection of money. So what I'd like to suggest is we come back to this, and if we find out there isn't enough money left, then I'll bring it back next year in a different form with probably more detail.
Fair enough. Councillor Price and Andy Preston.
I'd just like to suggest we defer it.
Andy Preston?
Just to highlight, which can be seen in a lot of the pictures actually, is that the predominant issue is that residents are using the Virgin accessing up a full height curb with no private access to their front gardens. That is what is causing the damage, which they shouldn't really be doing, and the county in theory could be enforcing against that. Traditionally we've not funded private accesses because it's to the benefit of that individual resident rather than to the residents of Cambridge as a whole. However, you could argue potentially that providing an access improves the general environment of that street and removes the damage of the verge. But just to highlight that that is the predominant problem, is that vehicles are using the verge as a private access.
Councillor Riley, then Councillor Manning.
With due respect to Councillor Manning wanting to bring this back at the end of this, we are already coming back to several proposed projects from Councillor Manning. We're running out of money. Given that you're prepared to defer it, I suggest we just defer it.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just going to make the point in the actual, just so everyone understands. The point here is that because for some bizarre historical reason, the problem is that people's driveways don't line up correctly with where the grass is, i.e. they have to drive over the grass to get to their driveway, and then next to their driveway is the bit that you'd expect the concrete bit to drive up. So, but happy to go with Councillor Riley's suggestion.
Okay, thank you for that. So all those in favour of deferring the scheme?
Unanimous, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. So we move on to N21. We're nearly there. Green End Road Rec. Improvement to the entrance is on page 14 of the additional papers. And page 74, the description there on the main agenda. Any comments? Councillor Bird?
Well, about 2.5 years ago, I actually brought this up because we were wondering where the metal poles went out of the actual bollards they've got there. And nothing was done. So something needs doing on that bit of corner. I do worry with the poles because they're sharp ends. So if something could be done there, I'd be really great.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Manning?
Just to say, this is one of these ones that I had in the bidder 2 years ago, and it just doesn't look very nice, and it'd be great, like Councillor Bird said, we can improve it.
Agree with that. All those in favour? Okay, N22 is Church Street, Cheston High Street, Verge. That's again, this is page 14 on the additional sheets. And page 75 on the main agenda for the description. Any comments on this scheme? Councillor Riley?
Given that we've already approved, I think, the improvements to the joint cycleway pathway there, whatever we do here has to be, as it says in the officer's notes, make sure that that's included. I don't know whether that's going to make any difference to the potential cost. I don't know anything from that.
Councillor Bird?
I think this one's been done. The water's gone. The new drain's been done.
Okay, Councillor Manning?
So this isn't just draining. What happens every year is that because cars run over the corner, there's a muddy ditch, and basically it drains on fine every year, but then it fills up with water every year. The suggestion I was going to make, given that both ward councils support this, depending on how the other scheme goes, this could be funded as part of that. So I would maybe suggest that this is left to the end. So for spare money, you come back to it, and then the 11 grand could well do more than just drop both curves at either end and sit around. It's just talking about building a small section of it. So.
Shall we come back to that? Okay, we'll come back to that one. I've got a little list to come back to. I might be reminding exactly what we're coming back to, but then we move on then to N24. N24 is on page 15 of the supplementary sheets and page 77 of the main agenda. St Giles War Memorial. A fairly modest proposal, cleaning and some repairs. Councillor Riley.
I'm embarrassed to talk about this given I've spoken every single thing I think so far. I think, yeah, the St Giles War Memorial, given the particular importance of this year in memorialising dead and how local people are to memorialise in St Giles, it's a very modest amount of money, which those involved in this project have to be able to garner extra, but this would be a real boost to this particular memorial, and I'd just ask, given it's a small amount of money, I'd be very grateful if the committee could see their way towards approving this.
Thank you. Councillor
Yeah, just to add to Karina's comments, St Giles Gate is very visible from the High Street. It it does get quite a few tourists walking through, and it runs and it does run quite regular events that benefit the community. And so to have the War Memorial cleaned up, particularly for this year, would be beneficial, I feel.
Thank you. Councillor Sales.
This War Memorial is within the grounds of St Giles Church. I agree with the sentiments expressed by two councillors opposite, but this is not our responsibility, this is the responsibility of the Diocesan Board.
I think Councillor Riley may come back for a clarification.
The reason why I brought it to this is because we actually do have responsibility for that churchyard. If it was purely under we take responsibility for maintaining that churchyard, and if we didn't, I wouldn't take responsibility.
Take responsibility, but the fact that we take it does not mean that we are actually directly responsible for the churchyard or the projects in it. We're not responsible for the graves and the tombstones, are we?
Okay, well, Councillor Manning and then Mr Bond.
Can I just suggest that given the modest amount of money, given what year it is this year, that it actually would be quite a nice stage to do it as part of the year we're in, and do that publicly and say this is North Area's contribution to.
I agree, I think it's a very good suggestion. Mr Bond.
Memorials are in general the responsibility of those who put them in, and if there is an involvement, it would be by the parochial church council, not the diocesan board. But a closed churchyard is, as you rightly say, the responsibility of the city council, which takes on, but even they don't have responsibility for memorials. My understanding, we've got the same thing in Chesterton, where we're looking at the War Memorial, and that is the responsibility of the PCC to do any repairs and maintenance on it, not the city council, although it is a closed churchyard.
Okay, Councillor Riley, do you want to come back with a clarification?
No, I take Mr Bond's points and Councillor Sales' point, but at the moment agreeing with Councillor Manning in that it's this year, it's £2,000. I think we should do it.
Absolutely, I agree with you, Noel. So, should we move to voting? All those in favour? Okay, and we go on to N26, the Chesterton High Street pavement and curb improvements. 15,000 is proposed from this committee. Any comments about this? Councillor Bird.
Okay, I can see what the officers have put low risk project. The thing is, that area has got a terrible camber, and when you try and get out, especially if you're a wheelchair user, try and get out of the car, your car door hits the pavement in the one disabled bay we've got in Chesterton, and then trying to get from your wheelchair up to the shops, it's really bad. It's very hard work. And I have complained about this before, and I asked the committee to be favourable at this one for me.
Councillor Manning?
Chair, it's a suggestion. I support the proposal, but it's a suggestion that we could take this forward as an LHI bid, get the money from the county, and then go to Tesco and make them pay for the rest of it. Well, no, but I mean, Tesco, you know, if we went to them and said, I'm pretty sure we can get this through, together we can get this through the LHI process, and then in advance of the LHI process, go to Tesco and say, you cough up the other 5-10 grand. I don't just will shop here again. I'm sure they wouldn't like the adverse publicity that two ward councillors from both two political groups could drum up. If they didn't drum up, if they were so minded to make us lose 10 grand of county money, but that would then give us money for the other schemes. That's all we'll say.
Okay, Andy Preston.
I actually had a look at this on my way to the committee, actually, so I hadn't been to the site to have a look. And the issue is actually the level of the carriageway, not the level of the footway. The only way to resolve the matter is to actually raise the curb line along the section of parked vehicles as you see it here. The carriageway cambers away very sharply down to the curb, and then the footway has to do the same from Tesco's to meet it. So the only way to resolve it is actually to raise the curb line and the carriageway along the channel line for the length of the shops, and therefore reprofile the footway so it has less of a camber. So the 15,000 that's currently allocated or suggested is probably quite tight in terms of deliverability. I think we need to potentially speak to county maintenance or the county council about providing further contributions even to the 15,000. But it would certainly be something that that we could take forward in discussions with the county. But that, as I see it, that's the only way to resolve the issue. And obviously that's not a Tesco's issue. It's a highway issue, county highway issue in theory.
Mr. Bond?
Yeah, this is a highway perennial. I think it's about 5 years ago that we were discussing this, actually with the regional manager of Tesco's, as to what the possibility was. And at that time, Ian Smith, who was the regional manager, whilst very interested, took one look at it and said, well, will the county council actually come up with a scheme that they will accept, because of the problem being the camber and the gully. And the difficulty with doing anything, as you know, with gullies, is that if you make the mistake, someone gets their basement full of water, or worse. One suggestion I made at the time was, could we just possibly culvert that section by linking up the footway top into the side of the road so that it would be more level. Tesco ended up with an interim solution. They have a little ramp which allows their vehicles to be more or less level, to be unloaded and loaded. And if you go along, you'll see them negotiating to put the trailers up on the ramp so that they can actually get stuff off, on and off safely. But it is a difficult one, and Mr. Preston is absolutely right. There isn't an easy solution, because if there was, it would have been done by now.
Thank you. Councillor Onosanya, then Councillor Manning.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to ask, if the solution is to basically heighten the pavement, surely that will cause problems for pedestrians, wheelchair users and people with pushchairs or mobility issues coming down, because at the moment car doors actually hit the curb and you're trying to get out, you're going to make that curb even higher. I'm just a bit confused how that would work.
Okay, Councillor Manning, then Councillor Riley and Andy Preston.
Just following from Mr. Bond's comments, is that partly why I was suggesting taking us through the LHI process is that A, we can get it publicly on the LHI even before we actually get it through, and that will allow us to go to Tesco and say, we have got county backing for this initially. If we then get the money and get the match funding from Tesco, it's going to give us much more chance of actually getting Tesco on board rather than being seen as a city thing that might have at risk because the county might not agree with it. I would be happy to take away an action to work with Councillor Bird to do that and get it through and get Tesco on board at the same time. And I think that might give us a better chance of resolving these kind of issues around, is it possible, are you going to get anywhere, are Tesco's going to support it, etc.
Thank you. Councillor Riley and Councillor Smart.
Bearing in mind what Councillor Manning just said again, can I move that we defer this? It's a lot of money, we can spend it on other things, and then we can bring this back when we know the feasibility and whether there's other pots of money for it.
Yeah, you want to add that?
I concur. But I guess the thing I wanted to say was, maybe Mr. President answer this, but that pavement up to the shop front, I presume that the shops own the part that comes down to the kind of the pathway, do they? That's their responsibility.
I think Andy Preston wants to come back over a few points actually, so.
Taking the opportunity to do a very rough sketch. That's what I heard earlier. So T is the Tesco's property. So the highway boundary, from visiting the site, is probably approximately there. So Tesco's will be responsible for the first maybe metre and a half of the footpath. I mean, I can't say for sure because I haven't seen the highway plan of where the highway boundary is. The section that is the steepest, so this section here, is the highway responsibility of the county council as the highway authority. You then have the curb, and there's a steep camber that drops from the centre line of the road down to that curb. So the suggestion is that this curb line is is relayed. It is an issue. It's not as simple as this because it affects, as Mr. Bond suggested, drainage on the approaches because you're creating a hill almost on the curb line. So the theoretical way of resolving it would be to relay that curb line at that level. So the curb becomes at that level. You then fill in this area with asphalt, you fill that area with asphalt, and then it becomes leveler, flatter. That's the only way to resolve it. But it causes issues either end because the road will have to increase the level of the curb will have to increase past the shop frontages, which will cause issues for drainage. If the drainage is flowing in one direction, you're creating a hill, which you then won't drain and potentially flood people's properties, etc., etc. So it needs a lot more investigation, but that is the only real way of resolving the issue.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think we had a proposal to defer, and from all the comments, I think that's clearly the right decision to formally go to that vote. All those in favour of deferring this view?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. And finally, we've got N27, Brownsfield and Bramblesfield benches. And that's on page 15, handy sheets. Page 80, description and the main agenda. Any comments?
Thanks, Chair. I brought this one in, I brought it in last year as well. We have some benches in Brownsfields and Bramblefields, but they're not suitable for people who are elderly. There's no arms on them, so they can't push themselves up. And a lot of the elderly people, when they walk through to the doctors, need to have a rest in between. And they brought that to my attention, so that's why I keep bringing it up.
Thank you. Any other comments? Straightforward. Councillor Manning?
Only that in the totality, if you consider other bids, there is £50,000 in the station project that will go towards Bramblefields, which could fund that. And that's only a comment that if it made a difference to another bid that people feel strongly about. But if it doesn't, then it's supportive.
Well, I think if I know strong feelings on it, I think I'm minded to I'll be minded to approve this one. Those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. So, what have we got left? That's what we need to know at this point.
21,777.
Okay, and I don't know if Glenn has kept a note. I tried to keep a note of the schemes we're going to come back to. I apologise for having such a long and convoluted process, but it is quite difficult, but also I think quite important to get through properly and allow everyone to comment. Councillor O'Reilly.
Sorry, Chair, can you remind me how much we've got left at the moment, and then the amount that was 21,777. All right, and we've got how many people are revisiting? Is it 3?
I think Glenn just going to remind us. The notes are. Yes, I've got N9, which is the Hayling Way tree planting. I've got. Were you coming back to the bollard? Yep, that was N11. N16 and also N22.
It's just, Chair, it occurred to me that we've approved 25,000 for the strategic look at drop curbs across the north area, and that we might want to, when we're revisiting these, consider whether any money that's left over should go into that pot, which would benefit the whole north area.
Okay. Any discussion about that point? Yeah, could you just clarify again? Yeah.
Just to repeat, we've got, I think, marginally more money than we have projects that we're revisiting right now. But it occurs to me that we've allocated 25 grand towards drop curbs, strategic look at drop curbs across the north area, and that we should make the decisions on these ones that we're revisiting with the knowledge that any money that we haven't spent could be allocated to that drop curb project, which would benefit all four wards within the north area.
Okay, so we can go through these schemes that we're coming back to, but in the knowledge that anything left over will go into the yeah. Okay, is that everyone clear about that? And what's left over will go into N25. I think. So, shall we go through them very quickly in the order we have? N9 was the Hayling Way tree planting. I think we have enough money for all these schemes. And we have a little left over, as Karina already suggested. Do we want any more debate on this? Councillor O'Reilly.
I'm minded to defer this because I think there are alternatives to get the same outcome, and I also don't think that it's that much of a priority. We're talking about a bit of muddy grass on the towpath. It's not preventing access or anything like that.
Yep, happy to defer. Show of hands, all those agreeing to vote?
Unanimous, Chair.
And then I think it was the bollard, N11. High Street, it's like the haymakers. So we will come back to this. Any other points about it, or we're going to... Councillor Riley?
I think we're joined here, we're speaking with a single voice, but it's a grand benefit to improve pedestrian safety. Do it.
All right then, all those in favour? So we agreed that
Chair, as opposed to unanimous.
Okay, fair enough. Then I think we have N16. We said we'd come back to Fallowfields, Frank Lane cut through. 2,500. Any more points about this scheme? Yeah, Councillor Riley.
Again, I'm kind of inclined to defer this one because I'm looking at that and I can't see a particularly easy way of actually achieving the desired outcomes. And I'm not even sure there is a way to achieve the desired outcomes. And I also don't think it's massive urgency either, so I'm minded to defer.
Councillor, are you happy with that?
Yeah, happy with defer. I was trying to lay off this track. What happened to N8?
N8,
which is more about meeting an element of risk.
Yeah, we both do. N8, we the Frank Lane grading, isn't it?
N8 wasn't in the list we've just gone through. We're from N7 to N12, so it's 8 on the previous vote on the recommendation.
Yep, N8 would defer. Yep, N8 would defer. But we didn't agree to come back to that. So yes, we're on N16. Are we happy to approve that? This is the Fallowfield, Franks Lane, that's right, isn't it? Coming back to that one? Have I got that right?
Deferral or approval, Chair?
That was deferral.
Sorry, I suppose what I'm suggesting, Chair, is if we could take N8 out being deferred on the basis that there's a risk there, and if it, if the opposite... Of course we can.
Okay, I think the proposal is to defer. We have to show hands. Those in favour? N16. Yes, N16.
Yes, that's unanimous, Chair.
And the final one, which we come back to, is N22. Church Street, Chester High Street Burgess, at 5,000. I think we were happy to any more comments? Are we happy to approve this? Yeah, all those in favour? Yep.
I'm just curious, I may have just got myself confused because I'm through a lot of these bits. Same locations included as part of the LHI business below this project in 27.
Yeah.
Which project are you talking about there?
It's the Chesterton Road project, so it's the one that's already built. It's a separate thing. It's just roughly the same area.
The point we made before, yeah.
Yeah, N27 is the Brownfield Nature Reserve of Edges. Yeah, so all right.
I think the point I made is a separate scheme. Are we happy to support it? All those in favour?
That's unanimous again, Chair.
Okay, and that is it. Okay, Councillor Riley.
Can I propose that 15,777 goes into the drop curve North Area project?
Yep, we happy with that? Yep. All those in favour?
1, 2, that's 8 votes, Chair, to nil.
And that's it. I think we spent a lot. So, on the basis of everything we discussed, I'm not going to go through the board again. We have the recommendations just to formally go through, which is the ones we've not yet already agreed: 2.2, 2.3. 2.4 and 2.5, which makes the point that all these schemes are subject to positive consultation and final approval by ward councillors. So all those in favour of the remaining recommendations?
Again, unanimous, Chair.
Thanks so much. I'm afraid my record of finishing meetings at 10 o'clock has had the chop. We have 2 further agenda items. Councillor Manning.
You haven't done the BMX item, have you?
That's what I was just saying.